let's talk menstrual health. Now, menopause is not an isolated component of our physiology, yet you would be forgiven for thinking that it is, the way that the narrative is running right now. But in actual fact, one of my very well-known sayings is, we don't talk about menopause because we don't talk about menstruation, and we don't talk about menstruation because no one taught us how to. And so we need to understand menstruation in order to truly understand menopause. It's the same hormones involved in our menstrual cycle as involved in menopausing. And when we look at it in terms of ovarian aging, the whole thing starts to fall in place. So from the day we start our periods and the ovaries switch on, and we start this infradian rhythm called the menstrual cycle, there's a conversation going on between the ovaries and the brain. And the hormones surge at different times of the month, and we have this dance between estrogen and progesterone. Now, I'll be talking about estrogen in more detail in another video, because it's actually a family of hormones. So really what we need to be doing is talking about estradiol, the hormone that is specifically released from the ovaries during the menstrual cycle and during what's called reproductive aging, or our reproductive years. It was one of the things that really used to bug me when I started reading about menopause, where it always says the ovaries, estrogen is primarily released in the ovaries. And I'd sit there and I'd scroll down and go, okay, so where's the secondary source then? Tell me. And then it turns out it's not actually even estrogen either. So it's estradiol is released in the ovaries during our reproductive years, but we also have a very large supply of non-ovarian estrogens as well. But going back to the menstrual cycle, so we have this dance between estrogen and progesterone. And this creates a thickening of the uterine lining, which if there is no egg released or an egg released and not fertilized, the lining then sheds. And this is our period, or our actual what's called menstruation. That bleeding can take anything between 2 to 7 days, maybe longer, okay? But you need to know what yours is, and you need to track it. So when it changes, you know. Because if you don't know what your regular is, or your typical cycle is, when they shift, and they do, that is an indicator of something in our general whole health, our whole metabolism, our whole metabolic health. And it can give us an indication of how our other hormones are doing, because it's not just the sex hormones, okay? It works as a hormone collective. So tuning into your menstrual cycle and understanding the variations and how you feel at different points of the cycle is really, really beneficial. As a menstruator, I'm a menstruator, and if you are, you know, co-menstruators, we're going to try and get you on board with this, so stay tuned and I'll talk to you another time. But we know that we feel different at different points of the cycle. We know when the estrogen is rising, we feel different. When it's falling, we feel different. When progesterone comes into the equation on the second half of the cycle, that we also feel different. But what is your feeling, and how do you feel? We talk about it in terms of typical or general, and sometimes we hear people say normal, okay? But I don't think I'm normal. And not being normal doesn't make me abnormal. And we have to think about it in terms of that when we're talking about menstrual health as well. So what is your cycle? And it's very individual to you. You'll hear us talk about the unique experience of menopause, but we also have unique experiences of menstrual health. So tuning into your menstrual health will be fundamental for you, helping to understand, regardless of where you are on the continuum right now. So if you think you're in perimenopause, get on board with tracking your cycle now and understand the nuances and the differences on how you feel physically and mentally at different parts of your menstrual cycle, and become what I call a hormone detective.